December 1944, Northern Italy. Snow blankets the steep, claustrophobic stone streets of Sommocolonia. The winter silence breaks. Advancing German infantry floods the valley, overwhelming the town's perimeter. Civilians are trapped, and outgunned American forces begin a chaotic retreat. To survive a withdrawal of this scale, the distant artillery needs eyes left behind. A forward observer stationed high in the town to track the enemy and call down strikes. Without exact coordinates, the artillery is blind. If the heavy guns fall silent, the advancing German troops will easily overtake the fleeing American soldiers and the sheltering civilians. Taking that observation post means staying behind as the enemy swarms the streets. It is a guaranteed death sentence. To pull it off, someone has to volunteer to trade their life for the survival of the retreating column. First Lieutenant John R. Fox stepped forward to take the post. Fox was an officer in the 92nd Infantry Division, a segregated, all-black unit known as the Buffalo Soldiers. These men were deployed to the frozen mountains of Europe to fight fascism, putting their lives on the line for a country that still enforced Jim Crow laws and treated them as second-class citizens at home. Among the men of the 92nd, Fox carried a towering reputation. His troops followed him implicitly, trusting a commanding presence and quiet courage that demanded respect, regardless of the era's prejudices. Stepping into that observation tower was a lethal choice. He chose to shield the lives of his countrymen, defending a nation that refused to fully defend him. This tactical map illustrates the mechanics of a forward observer. They operate as the eyes of the battlefield, visually identifying targets, calculating the distance, and radioing the exact geographic geometry back to heavy artillery batteries miles behind the front line. From the second floor of a stone tower, Fox looks down. The German infantry is pouring into Sommocolonia, bleeding through narrow cobblestone streets, aggressively closing the gap towards his position. Through the static of his radio, Fox begins reading numbers. Moments later, heavy shells scream overhead and crash into the streets below. The explosions chew through the enemy formations, severely slowing their momentum. But every artillery strike leaves a trail back to the observer. The German troops trace the line of sight and zero in on the tower. Rifle fire begins tearing through Fox's shattered windows. Smoke thickens in the stairwells. Miles away, the commanders listening on the radio hear the volume of gunfire closing in. They officially order Fox to abandon his post and save himself. Fox ignores the order. He recognizes the brutal math of the battlefield. If he leaves the window now, the artillery stops. The Germans break the line, and the retreating American forces will be decimated. The defensive ring dissolves entirely. Enemy boots are pounding against the exterior walls of his tower. The German infantry is no longer advancing on the town. They are inside the building's courtyard. Through the crackle of the radio, Fox's voice breaks through one last time. He calmly reads out a final set of geographic coordinates. Looking at this targeting grid, the artillery operator plots the numbers on his map. The grease pencil traces the grid lines, sliding across the coordinates, until it stops dead center on Fox's own observation post. The operator freezes. He clicks his radio, warning him the strike is aimed directly at the tower. The shells will obliterate his position. Fox responds immediately. "Fire it. There's more of them than there are of us." The battery fires. A massive barrage rips through the sky and impacts the tower directly. The ancient stone fractures, collapsing the observation post inward, burying the radio, the enemy infantry, and Lieutenant Fox in ash. Days later, Allied reinforcements push back into the valley, retake Sommocolonia, and begin clearing the rubble of the shattered tower. Beneath the crushed stone, they find Fox's body. Lying dead in the immediate wreckage around him are more than 100 German soldiers. His final, calculated strike single-handedly shattered the enemy's spearhead. Yet when the after-action reports were filed, his actions were quietly archived. Because of the era's deep-rooted racial prejudices, the military establishment ignored the scope of his heroism, leaving his story buried for decades. His sacrifice carried a crushing dual weight. He gave his life without hesitation to protect his brothers in arms,
dying for a command structure that initially refused to acknowledge he even existed. It took over 50 years for the historical record to be corrected. In 1997, John R. Fox was finally awarded the nation's highest military decoration, the Medal of Honor. Today, military historians study his final radio transmission as a masterclass in absolute duty, recognizing his sacrifice as one of the most astonishing acts of bravery in American history. In the quiet hills of northern Italy, the stone towers of Sommocolonia have been rebuilt. The streets where an army was broken are now silent. In the darkest moments of war, one man calculated the exact cost of his duty and paid it anyway. He ensured that countless others lived, proving that heroes are remembered and legends never leave the battlefield.